Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Trevor Wood is the owner of Network Midlands Limited. Trevor has written a series of blog posts about various aspects of networking, and in today's interview we talk about two of them: the differences between selling and networking, and the reasons why businesses fail to make networking work for them. My guest on the podcast today is Trevor Wood from Network Midlands Limited. Thanks for joining me, Trevor.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Now, when it comes to networking, I'm always really keen to impress on people that they shouldn't go into the room thinking that they're going to sell, because that's a real turn-off. And I know that you've come up with the 10 differences between selling and networking, is that right?
Yes, I have. I've sort of curated this from my own experience and from talking with other people and a couple of newsletters that I get. So, yeah, brought it all together.
Okay, well, take it away, Trevor. Tell us the 10 differences between selling and networking.
Okay, first of all, I want to say in the past, networking has often had negative connotations, and that's very often because salesmen get sent along to network. You've probably come across the scenario, a salesman turns up because he's been told to go and sell, so he thinks, and his boss says, go and try some of the networking events. So they come along and do their sales pitch. But I'd say the main differences between selling and networking is that sales is a process of interaction between two people to try and produce a sale of the goods or service, whereas networking, a sale could be a consequence of the contact, but it's not the primary goal. So, you know, a salesperson in a networking event might well, but is almost certainly focused on the short term. They're trying to get a sale now, whereas a real networker, somebody like you and me, for example, would spend time building relationships, and they're focused on the long term.
Yes.
A person who's selling will try to detect a need that can be satisfied by their product or service, and so they'll listen, but only so that they can hear whether there's a need that can be filled. Whereas a networker will share information that's interesting to the other party, even if it's got nothing to do with their business. They're listening to help. And the hard seller, sales, networky person is only likely to give if they're going to get an immediate profit, whereas a real networker will give without actually expecting something back at the time. But actually, in the long run, they're probably going to get more back than they give.
Yes.
And as already mentioned, you know, the salesman will listen to sell, whereas the networker will listen to help. And the salesman will ask questions to be able to position their product or service better, to seek a way that they can actually sell to you, whereas a networker will ask questions to find out how they can be of service to you and to assist you. And that's not just in what their product or service is, but maybe connecting you with somebody else that you need to talk to.
Yeah. I think nobody likes to be sold to, but everyone likes to be helped, don't they?
That's exactly it, yes. And that's probably the primary difference between a salesman and a networker. I like to think of the salesman as a hunter, and they go in and there's a bit of rape and pillage. They grab everything they can and then they disappear off. Whereas networkers are farmers, and they go in, they spend time, they're building relationships, they're building friendships, and they're cultivating the contacts that they've got.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah. They'll find everybody interesting, whereas the salesman will only find a potential customer interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so what have you got next, Trevor?
Well, again, we've all seen this at networking events. The person who comes around, shoves a business card in your hand, maybe takes yours, says hi, hello, and disappears on further. But actually, what you really want to do is give out business cards only to people that you've really made contact with, and perhaps who you want to continue that contact with. So spend time talking to them first before exchanging business cards. And the salesman will, again, going back to talking, will only talk about their product or service and probably won't listen to you, or listen to what you've got to say about your product or service. Whereas the real networker, in my eyes, we've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in that percentage.
Yes.
They will listen a lot more than they will talk, and they will encourage the person they're talking to say more about themselves and to open up a little bit. The salesman will try to bring attention to their product or service. They'll be dropping it in all the time, whereas a networker may not even talk about their service. They may hear something that the other person's saying and suggest somebody else in the network to go and talk to, and refer them on, in fact. And finally, for the salesman, the goal is the sale. I heard somebody say that they often view people as a necessary evil to be used to reach their goal, whereas with a networker, the goal is to establish and maintain contacts. And one of the possible consequences is a sale. Other possible consequences and probably a richer income, a richer result in the end is actually a referral, one way or another, through to a third party. So that's really the basic difference. But you know, we've seen these sort of people at networking events, and they don't last very long. Eventually, networkers cotton on to who they are and start avoiding them.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly been at a meeting where it was a lady representing a local hotel turned up, and she joined our small group of 4 or 5 people who were chatting, and instead of asking us about what we did or introducing herself or anything kind of normal, she literally handed her business card to everybody in the group and said, I'm from the such and such hotel. We have rooms you can hire for conferences and so on. I'm sure you'll be interested in that. Thank you. I'm moving on to the next group now. And she literally said that and moved on to the next group. And we all just looked at each other and thought, did that really just happen? And I can't imagine that anybody kept that business card.
You might have kept it, but you're never going to use it.
No.
And the other ones are the other people that, and there is a particular franchise type thing where this happens with, and I think they must train their guys like that. They almost pin you up against the wall and won't let you go, and they just keep blasting you and keep blasting you. And I've seen that at networking meetings, and again, it gets to the stage where people recognize them coming in and think, I'm not going to talk to him, I'm going to avoid him. And it actually tarnishes the brand of that franchise. It was such a negative effect on me that I'm just not interested in using that brand at all.
Yeah. I'm surprised that anybody thinks that kind of approach would work.
Yeah, but I guess that salesman, that's the way they're trained, that's their psyche, that's their mentality. Otherwise, they would be doing something other than sales.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame because, like you say, that kind of behaviour does give networking groups a bad name.
It does.
Okay. So are there any more differences, do you think, Trevor?
That's primarily it. I sort of rolled some of them together. So, but the real big differences, I'd say, is listening rather than talking and building relationships rather than blitzing.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, now we've also got something else we're going to chat about, which is the reasons that businesses fail to make networking work for them. I mean, I guess what we just talked about is one of those reasons, but what other reasons do you think there are?
Okay, well, the first one is they don't have a clear message. And that is that they're not communicating what they're actually looking for in a referral or what they're actually trying to sell or whatever. So some people will come along. We had a person at a networking group I used to go along to. Her husband was an electrician, and she started off by saying he was Part P certified and and it meant absolutely nothing to us. It wasn't until we got sort of 2/3 of the way through that we actually found out he was an electrician. So the tip there is get up front with who you are, what you do, what sort of referral you're looking for, and then people can be thinking about that while they're listening to the rest of your talk. And perhaps they don't even know what success looks like. When you visit a networking group, you've got to have an idea of what you want to get from that group, and different groups are better for different things. So am I allowed to mention names of
course.
Networking groups?
Yes.
Okay, so people like BNI, they're very, very focused on getting referral work, and they're very, very good at it. Other networking groups, for example, Federation of Small Businesses, theirs are much more relaxed and very good for building relationships and getting business support and ideas and such like from. So when you visit a networking group, decide what you want from it, give it a go, and if it doesn't happen, then that networking group probably isn't for you. Try something else. And that leads on to failing to commit. And this is, again, something that salespeople do. They'll visit a networking group for 2, 3, maybe 4 meetings, not get anything from it, and move on. And we've already said that it's building relationships. It can take time. When I started networking, it was about 11 months before I got my first referral. But the quality of referrals I was getting, because I had committed and was building the relationships, they turned out to be really good. One of these clients I had for 15 years.
Wow.
And she only stopped being a client when they sold the business. So commit to a network. If you think it's going to work, give it a good try.
Yeah, I think it can take a while to get to know people, can't it? And
It does.
and if you don't know people, and you don't know that you can trust people, you're not likely to refer them on, are you?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. You have to build that that trust with people, because they're going to trust you with their clients. And if they refer a client to you and it all falls flat on the face, then they're going to look bad. So next one is businesses, they don't do their homework. Prepare for the meeting. You might be having to give a presentation. It might be a 1-minute one, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes. But know exactly what you're going to say and what you want to achieve from it and how you're going to say it. Practice it beforehand. Perhaps put some time in your diary every week just to prepare for your networking meetings. And then the biggest failure in my eyes is failing to follow up, particularly following up on referrals.
Yes.
I've referred work or potential clients to people, and when I phoned up the referee a while later, they've never heard from the person I referred them to. Well, actually, that doesn't show well on me, but it also doesn't show well on the other guy.
No.
He might have just lost that $1 million contract.
Yeah, that amazes me, because if you've been given a referral, that's a warm lead, isn't it? Why would you ignore that?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with the referral focused groups like BNI, their leads are always really warm or hot. The person is expecting your phone call or expecting your letter or whatever, and if they don't get it, you've lost work. And again, going back to our previous talk about selling and networking, businesses focus on the sale and not on the relationship.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to say any more about that. But then you also have the networkers who I guess what you would call as 9-to-5 networkers. The 9-to-5 networker will turn up for a networking meeting and they're there for the networking meeting, but outside of that, they don't give it a thought. They don't arrange one-to-ones. They don't prepare properly beforehand. They don't follow up afterwards.
And I would say that the one-to-ones are very important, aren't they? That's where the magic happens.
It is indeed. That's where you start building the relationships find out more about each other. I would find out about you, what sort of clients you're looking for, and then as an absolute minimum, keep an ear open, but maybe even, oh, actually, I know, I'm going to talk to these people and see if they actually want the sort of work that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all really, really valuable, I think.
Yeah.
How about making sure that you stand out, that you're memorable at a networking meeting?
Well, that's interesting. It's really easy for women to be memorable at a networking meeting because you can dress differently. For men, it's suits with or without a tie in general, or maybe you wear what you wear for your trade. So I wouldn't necessarily expect a builder to be wearing a suit, but you go into a networking meeting and there's all the men, they're wearing dark blue or dark grey suits with a tie or not. But yeah, it's very difficult to stand out. I've taken to wearing very bright coloured ties. And if anybody wants to point me out, it's, oh, look, you need to go and talk to him. That's Trevor, the one with the hideous tie. But the other thing that stands out is a good tagline when you finish your presentation, because people remember that. I've actually picked up a referral or picked up a client where the person who was running the meeting phoned me the following day and said, somebody spoke to me, they couldn't remember your name or your company, but they remembered your tagline and want to talk to you.
And also, you have a little gimmick that certainly you're using on virtual networking meetings, your white hat. Tell me about your white hat.
Well, my day job, if you like, it is a cybersecurity consultant. So I perform penetration testing on websites. So I'm what's known as an ethical or white hat hacker. And so I put a white hat on and finish with the tagline, I'm one of the good guys because the good guys wear white hats. And for those who remember the old Saturday morning flicks, the good guys in the Cowboys and Indians and the Westerns films always wore white hats, and the bad guys always wore black hats.
Well, it's great because it that makes you stand out and that makes you memorable.
Yes, it does. And I've seen some others. There was a painter and decorator, his tagline, and this was nearly 20 years ago, so it shows I still remember it. His tagline was, I'm a painter, not a stripper.
Oh, I like that.
If you're listening to this and you haven't got a good tagline, get some friends round and brainstorm some. I know we can't go down the pub and have a beer at the moment, but when you can, have an evening down the pub, have a couple of beers and brainstorm some ideas for taglines. It won't take long to come up with some really good ones.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Now, just coming back to the virtual meetings again,
Yeah.
How are you finding those? Are you finding that it's very different to networking in person?
Yes and no. I think a lot of the meetings, because they're geared around doing a 1 minute elevator pitch, that's very similar. The thing I'm finding very different is it's difficult to break off into groups and have a chat and do the I was going to say social networking, but it's not quite social. It's the beginning of the relationship building process. And that's very difficult online. Unless you're on a networking group where they break you off into rooms or something. But even then, it's very difficult to get a flow going of chit chat because it's so easy to talk over each other.
Yeah. And I think this makes the following up and the one-to-ones afterwards even more important.
Yes, absolutely. I've actually probably had more one-to-ones afterwards now than I did with face-to-face networking.
Yes, and me.
I think I'm probably getting certainly 2, maybe 3 or 4 a week, whereas before I might have been having 1 a week.
Yeah, I would say it's the same for me.
Also, of course, the follow-up online is a lot easier than doing it face-to-face because you don't have to travel.
Yeah, that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, thank you very much for chatting to me, Trevor. That's been a really fascinating insight into the differences between selling and networking and the reasons why businesses fail to make networking work for them. And I'm sure this is going to be useful information for our listeners.
That's great, thank you. You will actually find on the blog on my website some of these tips. I realise one of them I haven't written up yet, but there are a number of tips and blog posts about networking on there. So that's network-midlands.co.uk, and search in the blogs for networking tips and you'll find them.
Lovely. Well, I will put that link into the show notes as well so that people can find it easily.
That's brilliant.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.